If you had been with me that Friday night in October 1967, the night I fell in love, you would have seen me as a skinny 18-year-old, yeah, I know, it's a long time ago, skinny 18-year-old entering a popular college night spot in White Plains, New York called the Fore and Aft. You ever been to a club that was too crowded, too smoky, too noisy? That was the Fore and Aft, and I had just arrived, had my hand stamped, and was headed toward the bar, and I saw her standing by the dance floor. Long, straight auburn hair, beautiful smile. Her glasses were perched on top of her head, and I stood transfixed, unable to move, until I heard a clear, distinct voice in my head say, "That's the girl you're going to marry." Now, I don't usually listen to the voices in my head, and I think that's good advice for us all, but that night I figured, if I'm going to marry her, I guess I should ask her to dance, and I began to thread my way through the crowd, thinking this is madness, not because I was hearing voices in my head, mind you, but because I was going to ask this beautiful woman to dance with me. She was way out of my league, and I figured, based on a long, sad personal history, I was sure I was going to get shot down again. "Hi, my name's Tony. Would you like to dance?" "Hi, Tony. I'm Christine. I'd love to dance." "Good news." She said yes. I took her hand for the first time, and we kind of squeezed ourselves onto the dance floor, and we hadn't been there but a couple seconds when somebody bumped into Chris. The glasses tumbled off her head, fell to the floor. We looked at the floor, couldn't see the floor. That's how crowded it was. Then I saw something flash, and I swooped down, and then it merged with the glasses. More good news. The glasses were unscathed. We both laughed, and we decided to quit the dance floor and find a place where we could sit and talk. And boy, could we talk. We talked, it seemed like for hours. We could talk about anything. We talked about books and films and our families and our hopes and our aspirations and sports. She made me feel like I mattered. And I loved the way that felt. Things were just going great. It really was. And then Chris was telling me about her summer job at a nursing home in New Jersey, and her father, who was a doctor, and she said, in passing, offhandedly, casually, that she could see herself marrying a doctor someday. Clearly, she had not heard the voice in my head. So I took that opportunity to bring her up to speed on our future together. And I said, "Wait a minute, Chris, you are not going to marry a doctor." And she said, "Oh, really? And how would you know that?" Then I actually said, "I know you're not going to marry a doctor because I have no intention of going to medical school." Yeah. She laughed too. And then I dug the hole a little deeper, and this may have been rushing the relationship just a tad. I said, no, Chris, you don't understand. I'm serious. I love you, and I'm going to marry you someday. And she said, "Well, don't be silly. We've just met." I said, "Don't you believe in love at first sight?" And she said, "Oh, this has been nice." You seem like a nice guy. You really do. But I have to get back to my friends. And I said, "But Chris," and I watched her walk away. Now, I can't really blame her from walking away. That really wasn't a very mature approach. But in my defense, immaturity is one of my qualities. And if you don't like that about me, well, so much for love at first sight. A few months later, I'm in Fort Polk, Louisiana, preparing to go to Vietnam. And I decided I wanted to reconnect with Chris, write her a letter, but I didn't have her full address. I had her name and the name of a small town in New Jersey, but I didn't have a street name or a house number or a zip code. So I wrote a letter to Chris Foley, Bernardsville, New Jersey. More good news. She got the letter. Bigger news, she wrote back. And soon we were writing back and forth virtually every day, and then I began calling her on Sundays from a payphone on base to a payphone in her dorm in upstate New York. And these long and expensive phone calls always ended the same way. I love you, Chris. You love me? Not yet. Hey, I was making progress. The topic no longer upset her. The night before I left for Vietnam, I went to see Chris at her school in upstate New York, and as I was leaving, she handed me a book of poems, of love poems, 19th century love poems called Because I Love You. And she said, Fitz, a woman at the nursing home where I worked last summer, gave me this book and told me to hold on to it until I met the man I loved. It's yours now. What's she saying? She loved me. It's about time. I was a victim of love at first sight, and Chris was a victim of love eventually. And both are genuine, both are real, but love, being in love, is only a beginning. And talk about good news. In May, we will celebrate our 54th wedding anniversary. Thank you. And congratulations to the 50th newlyweds. And I still haven't been to medical school.